Hi everyone and welcome back to the Unlisted Map. If you're new here, welcome. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. Today's adventure, we are back out at Murray's Dude Ranch out in Apple Valley. Yes, I know, we've been there. That was our first stop with the Green Book and Route 66. But I did a much deeper dive and I found some really interesting information. Did you know that Murray's Dude Ranch was the first all-black dude ranch in America in the 1930s and 40s? I didn't know that either. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and if you like it, give it a thumbs up, even share it. I could appreciate that too. All right, thanks for coming along with me on this journey, and we'll see you on the other side at the Unlisted Pairing. Cheers! Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Unlisted Map. I'm back out here at Murray's Dude Ranch in Apple Valley. The last time I was here, I gave you a brief history of how this property served as a vital oasis in the pages of the Negro Motorist Green Book. Since then, I've uncovered some absolutely incredible history. Today we're diving deep into how this once welcoming sanctuary, built for underprivileged youth, which went on to host Hollywood's royalty and the rich and famous, came to be, and how it ultimately faded into the unlisted pages of history. So we are outside of the car, and you can see that's Bell Mountain in the out there in the background. And today it looks like it's just another corner, empty lot, like we've seen before. Actually, this goes out way past this whole corner lot. I'm actually kind of in the middle. Those trees right there would be part of the property. I think I showed you guys some old concrete. Let me see if we can walk over there and see it. I don't want to know what that is. So we're not going back that way. I saw something spooky back there, guys. I don't know what that is. I'm not gonna look. It looked like a very big dead animal. Let's see. Sorry about that, guys. I kind of needed a minute. What I saw really shook me up. But getting back to our story, so Noli and Lela Murray, back in 1926, was able to purchase the property for $100. But the story goes, in 1926, Abe Cook attempted to give his ranch 4.5 miles northeast of Victorville to Noli and Lela. Lela provided many services to Abe Cook, and he tried to reward her with gifting her the ranch. However, income tax and inheritance laws had become stricter, and he let them have the ranch for $100. Lela came up to Apple Valley alone, then Noli came in 1936. Lela played a major role in bringing proper sanitation to the folks living on the banks of the Mojave River on East Street. And if you remember the story about Carrie's story and her daughter picketing on D Street for segregation during this time. So we had two very strong women up in the high desert. Now getting back to our story, the Dude Ranch craze swept the nation in the 1930s. They officially opened their gates to vacationers in 1937. Billed as the only black dude ranch in the world, it became a legendary sanctuary of dignity, safety, and pure recreation during the height of segregation, when Black Americans were barred from most public parks and hotels. I think I stumbled upon another filming location, you guys. If these hills could talk, they'd sing, because in the late 1930s, this very dirt became a bustling Hollywood movie set. A legendary performer named Herb Jeffries looked at the classic Hollywood westerns and realized there was zero heroic representation for black audiences. So he changed history right here. He became the Bronze Buckaroo, Hollywood's first singing or black singing cowboy. Now, Herb's own identity was a fascinating piece of the puzzle. He was actually born Umberto Alejandro Valentino. His mother was Irish, and he grew up never truly knowing his biological father. Over his life, Herb gave different accounts of his ancestry, sometimes saying his birth father was a Sicilian and a Moorish descent, and other times describing a black heritage. Because he had light skin and striking hazel, some accounts say blue, eyes, he could have easily passed for white or Mediterranean in Hollywood. But Herb made a choice. He saw that black children had no heroes on the silver screen, so he consciously stepped into the black community and claimed his destiny right here on this dirt. And let me tell you, he was an incredibly handsome cowboy. With his sharp presence, movie star good looks, and a smooth baritone voice, he completely charmed audiences. Because early film stock could wash a person out under this harsh desert sun, he needed to wear darkening makeup on this set to match the rest of the all black cast. In a bittersweet twist of the era's racial politics, studio executives actually told Jeffries he wasn't black enough for the audience, forcing him to wear darkening makeup to play the bronze buckaroo. I know it sounds incredibly jarring to hear today, but it's a stark reminder of just how fickle Hollywood was. In to the industry, identifying was just a box to check. Either you were too light or you were too dark, but as long as they could make money off of you, they'd figure out a way to bend the rules. That's exactly why a place like Murray's Dude Ranch mattered so much. Out here in the desert, away from the studio games, icons like Lena Horne and Joe Louis didn't have to fit into Hollywood's boxes. They could just be. Jeffries had four major musical westerns, including Harlem on the Prairie, filmed right here. I was going to say where I'm standing, but I've gone back into my car because it's a little hot out there. What is truly amazing about Herb is his incredible endurance. He lived to be a full 100 years old before passing away from heart failure in 2014. And he never truly retired. He continued to work, sing, perform at jazz festivals, and lecture at universities right up until his death, spending his final years making sure the legacy of the black cowboy was never forgotten. By the 1940s, word spread nationwide. Murray's was hosting around 100 guests a week. If you flipped open the Green Book during those decades, you'd find this place proudly listed as a premier desert destination. Heavyweight boxer champion Joe Louis was a regular here. Life magazine even ran a massive photo spread of him riding horses on this property, launching the ranch into national stardom. Icons like Lena Horne, Hattie McDaniel, and Clark Gable all came here to just breathe. And when you look at that guest list through the lens of colorism, Hollywood politics, and personal trauma, the Murray's Ranch wasn't just a vacation spot, it was a literal psychological sanctuary. Think about how heavy the air was back in Hollywood. Lena Horne and Jill Lewis carry the impossible weight of being light-skinned black icons whose image was constantly weaponized, scrutinized, or cropped by white executives to fit a rigid mold. Hattie McDaniels was facing intense personal relationship struggles and brutal criticism from all sides while trying to survive as a lonely trailblazer in a segregated industry. And then you have Clark Gable. He stands out as a white actor coming to an all-black dude ranch. But Gable famously despised the rigid rules and systematic cruelty of the studio system. He was a man who fiercely valued real human connection, and he used his massive star power to stand up for his black peers, even threatening to shut down production on Gone with the Wind unless the on-set bathrooms were integrated for his dear friend Hattie McDaniel. For all of them, escaping Los Angeles and driving out to the high desert wasn't just about a getaway or weekend getaway. It was about stepping into a space where the constant pressure, the colorism, and the political games of the silver screen finally stopped. Out here on this dirt, they could drop the mask and just be human. You can't talk about politics of the Hollywood elite without talking about Hedda Hopper. In 1930s and 40s, her gossip column was a weapon. With a single stroke of her pen, she could make or break a career, enforcing the strict, unwritten social codes and colorism dictated by the studio bosses. But on the open road, Hollywood's artificial hierarchy hit a wall. A segregated highway didn't care about box office status, box office power, or who was tracking who in the trades. For black stars and everyday travelers alike, survival and dignity boiled down to a single radical directory, the Green Book. While Hedda was busy monitoring who was sitting where in the restricted dining rooms of Beverly Hills, women like Lena Murray and Carrie Story were quietly writing their own rules. They didn't build a place to fit into Hollywood's system. They built a Green Book sanctuary that totally eclipsed it. It reminds us that the real power wasn't held by the people writing the gossip. It was held by the women building the safe havens. As the 1950s rolled in and the world slowly began to change, the original guest ranch era of Murray's started to wind down. Lela Murray tragically passed away in 1949, and by 1955, Noli was ready to pass the torch. As he passed it to one of the biggest superstars on the planet, the world-renowned singer and actress Pearl Bailey. Pearl had fallen completely in love with this desert ambiance. She and her husband, the legendary white jazz drummer Louis Bellson, bought 35 acres of the property for $65,000 and renamed it the Lazy Bee. Their marriage was a trailblazing interracial union at a time when that was incredibly rare and controversial, and they needed this desert peace just as much as the previous generation did. Now, if you think Pearl just used this as a glamorous, fleeting hideaway, think again. For nearly 10 years, from 1955 until she sold it to them in the mid 1960s, Pearl Bailey spent her days right here as an Apple Valley housewife whenever she could get away from the cameras and Broadway stages. She and Louis installed modern lighting and even put in the property's very first telephone line. This is where they chose to raise their children, Tony and Dee Dee. Pearl immersed herself completely in our high desert community. She joined the local chamber of commerce, and right here on this very dirt, one of the most famous women in America served as a local Girl Scout leader and Cub Scout den mother. Imagine being a kid in Apple Valley in the 1960s and having Pearl Bailey hand you your scout badge right here. Eventually, by the mid 60s, Pearl said the peace was interrupted by too many Hollywood freeloaders dropping in uninvitedly, so they reluctantly sold the land, but for a decade she kept the spirit of this sanctuary alive.
home is you. Home ain't a house that's built for two. Baby, you're the whole view. You're the windows and warmth in my living room. And as long as you let me, I'd like to live here too. 'Cause home is you. It's true. I'll be better at being a better someone to love. I'll be better at being...
When you hear about the Hollywood icon and families coming out here to laugh, ride horses, and dance under the desert stars, it's easy to get swept up in the romance of it all. And people often ask me if there was trouble out here, if angry mobs tried to march in and shut them down. But the real enemy Murray's faced wasn't a dramatic clash at the front gates. It was the quiet, grinding weight of the era. It was the anxiety of the drive out here through hostile sundown territories where travelers had to look over their shoulders just to reach safety. It was the financial strangulation of redlining where white-owned banks refused to give the Murrays loan to maintain this paradise. And ultimately, it was the institutional neglect that allowed this last standing structure of this historical space to be intentionally burned to the ground in a training exercise decades later. The true mark of the Murray's Dude Ranch isn't just that it existed. It's the face of a system designed to starve them out. They created an uncompromised sanctuary of absolute joy. By the late 1980s, the ranch had fallen into disrepair, and in a bittersweet turn of events in 1988, instead of preserving this monumental piece of American heritage, the remaining buildings were intentionally burned to the ground as a training exercise for the local fire department. Today, there's no monument here. There are no markers. There's no museum building at this crossroads.
'Cause home is you. Home ain't a house that's built for two. Baby, you're the whole view. You're the windows and warmth in my living room. And as long as you let me, I'd like to live here too. 'Cause home is you. It's true.
Thanks for watching the Unlisted Map. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, did you know Pearl Bailey was a local Girl Scout leader and den mother right here in Apple Valley? Until next time, let's keep exploring what's left off of the map. And welcome to the Unlisted Pairing. Today I'm actually going to pair for this Murray's Dude Ranch video a Rascal's Pinot Gris from Oregon. This is a 2024. It is part of the family of the Pinot Grigio. Pinot Grigio actually is a white grape in Italy, and the Pinot Gris is also a white grape in France. And so I'm going to pair it with some sourdough, toasted sourdough bread, some spicy salami. I actually found this really spicy goat cheese. It is the chipotle honeygoat cheese. And to kind of soften this a little bit, some of that heat, I've got the Milano's mango white chocolate cookie. The Pinot Gris is actually has the nose or the aroma of maybe a white flower, a pitted fruit like a nectarine or a peach, or maybe even pear or apple. And if I swirl it a little bit, I'm aerating it. I'm putting some air in it to kind of open up those aromas. And I'm definitely smelling some stone fruit or pit fruit. So thanks for being along for this ride this week for the Murray's Dude Ranch. And if you liked this video, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. If you haven't, please subscribe if you know somebody who is interested or is interested in the unlisted map and these stories that are not typically on the map. Please share. All right, thanks, and we'll talk to you soon. Cheers.